Following the closure of both ECW and WCW around the same time, a lot of their top stars and even some of the minor ones were picked up by the WWF. But still, many were left without a job. And that's when several companies looked to step up to the plate and bring in all the leftover stars who were either unwilling or just unasked to join WWE. One such company was World Wrestling All-Stars, a company which I can only describe as the middleman between WCW and TNA in the Wrestling Fed evolutionary chart. Today we're going to discuss their first major event. Now before we get into the actual show, I should state the company did exist in a tour prior to this. But all of that seemed to be in preparation for their first big presentation, as nothing that happened during those shows is considered canon, from what I can see. Hence the Road Dogg having a Phantom World title reign, as he'd win the belt in a show prior before the belt was vacated for the main event of the first pay-per-view. Yep, I'm already feeling that WCW level of brain fog confusion. The WWA was filled with a bunch of familiar faces if you were a wrestling fan during the 90s. We're talking about a show that consists of the likes of Jeff Jarrett, The Road Dogg, Konnan, Psychosis, Juventud Guerrera, Buff Bagwell, Crowbar, Norman Smiley, Disco Inferno, Gangrel, Luna, Lenny Lane, Lodi, and maybe most confusing, Nathan Jones. Even outside of its pretty lengthy in-ring roster, it boasts future stars and current-day legends, with a commentary team that consists of Jeremy Borash and Jerry the King Lawler. Also having one half of Harlem Heat, Stevie Ray, backstage as a behind-the-scenes interviewer. And the commissioner of the WWA was Bret the Hitman Hart. Yeah, that's a pretty stacked lineup right there. Just makes me think, where does it all go wrong? Well, the show starts off with WWA Commissioner Bret the Hitman Hart putting himself over all the talent everywhere as he seemingly lists off all of his grievances, before then talking a little bit about 9/11, which was a recent tragedy at the time, and then finally discussing the importance of the WWA's World Championship, as tonight's show is actually a tournament for that vacant championship. The first match on the card is two of my all-time favorite WCW cruiserweights going at it one more time, this time sans masks. And if I'm being honest, I really miss the masks, man. I know that the masks don't make the luchador, but judging by the career trajectory of almost every single luchador who is unmasked, I'm gonna go ahead and say that they help. Juventud Guerrera takes on Psychosis. The two high flyers go one-on-one in a ladder match that doubles as a title match for the vacant WWA International Cruiserweight Championship, in addition to being a tournament slot for the vacant WWA World Heavyweight Championship. Oh, WCW, you may be gone, but your stench still lingers on. It's awful, and I hate it, and yet, somehow, for some reason, I miss it. Juventud cuts a promo before the match, doing his I Am the Rock gimmick, and tries to get the crowd to chant along with him, to which no one has any response.
All those Juice fans out there chanting the Juice name.
What are you, not a Juice fan?
Like that is a dead crowd. No agreement, no affirmation, no disdain, no disapproval, just nothing. Not a soul says a thing. And this was one of the most uncomfortable moments I have ever seen in wrestling. And mind you, I've watched bones break. This is still somehow infinitely worse. The two cruiserweights have worked well together in the past, putting on some of the greatest matches in WCW's cruiserweight division. So you add a ladder to the mix, and that should only amplify things between these two. But instead, it feels like it handicaps them more than anything else. What on paper should be a dream match really just turned out to be a match and a hassle to watch, if I'm being honest. And that's pretty disappointing, especially when it's coming from two guys who were capable of so much more, and showed it on multiple occasions together. This match isn't terrible, but it's not nearly as fluid and fast-paced as a lot of other matches the two have had in the past. They don't seem to captivate the crowd, aside from one or two major moments and impressive bumps, but these moments are far and few between. There are a few scary botches, but luckily in the end no one was hurt, but the quality of the show was. Juventud wins, becoming the Juicerweight champion. If you need any more evidence to the WCW influence on the show, then look no further than the Starlets, a group of halftime dancers that perform pre-halftime, who are clearly the WWA's answer to the Nitro Girls. Next up, it's a dog fight as K-Dog takes on the Road Dogg in a dog collar match, because someone thought that was real clever. Did I say I missed WCW nonsense before? Because I might want to take that back. Anyway, Conan with 2 N's takes on the Road Dogg with 1 G. The first Max Moon comes down to the ring rapping, but no one hears him because he's not mic'd up properly. The real Double J comes out and welcomes everyone to the doghouse, after which he's attacked by his future 3 Live Crew partner, who proceeds to cut a promo on the Road Dogg as if he's not there. For some reason, Conan's working the cameras in the crowd and not looking at his opponent when he's addressing him, which is weird to watch when the guy is only a couple feet away. Conan mocks the Road Dogg's firing from WWE before walking into a punch. Again, this isn't a great match by any means. Not sure if I would even want to call this a match, given how short it is. But a dog collar match, in my opinion, should only be brought into play in a grudge feud, when there's story stakes between the two in the match. So this way the brutality of the match feels much more justified. When there's no problems between two people, it just comes off as unnecessary and really gimmicky. But that is the least of this match's problems. First and foremost, it's a dog collar match, in which the dog collar constantly falls off the competitors in the match. And that's both by design and mistake. There's a spot or two that required a ref distraction via losing the collar, except the collar drops on its own a few times before, further muddling the match stipulation. But to make matters even worse, there seems to be an uncertainty as to what's legal in a dog collar match. Usually these matches are no disqualification, but here they intentionally distract the ref so that they can use weapons. But even that seems inconsistent, because the ref has to be distracted so the two can use a crowbar, but Conan also started the match off with a title cheap shot to Road Dogg right in front of the ref, so I don't know, and I guess nobody really cared. The match ends in under 4 minutes after the roadie ties Conan up and decides to gesture behind his back. There are some things from the 90s that I do not miss. Next up, the former Crowbar, Devon Storm, takes on Screamin' Norman Smiley in a hardcore match. Again, this company's not going to live down the WCW accusations. Unlike almost every other match on this card, this match for some reason exists outside of the WWA title tournament. And this is going to sound a little bit out there, but this honestly might just be the match of the night. It's a goofy, fun hardcore match between two guys who are accustomed to working these types of hardcore matches. Norman Smiley was an entertainer through and through. He was kind of playing the part of Crash Holly in the WCW hardcore division before Crash Holly was even doing that part. And he got over by being the unlikely champion who was petrified of the opposition. It was fun. He was a lot of fun. Norman Smiley matches weren't technical wrestling classics, but they were thoroughly entertaining pieces of sports entertainment. I think he was probably one of the most underloved parts of the later half of the Monday Night Wars. In that same respect, I'd argue that Crowbar is one of the most underrated wrestlers from that time period as well. For someone who was labeled as a hardcore guy, his work always came off as pretty crisp as is. He managed to incorporate weapons into what he did, but I always felt like he fell into that category just by being a wacky character. The two do some pretty creative spots with the foreign objects they're given, and they make use of the space around them, brawling throughout the arena, and even to the back to annoy Disco Inferno at one point. There's a bunch of fun exchanges between the two, and all things considered, they put on a fairly entertaining match with spots that, quite frankly, at times felt a little bit too big for this caliber of match. Devon Storm places Norman Smiley on 2 tables and climbs the Titantron to launch himself down at Smiley. And that seems kind of crazy to me. I mean, Mick Foley didn't get thrown off Hell in a Cell in a throwaway match on an indie show, you know what I mean? Sometimes there's a time and place for these things. Despite putting Norman Smiley through 2 tables, Crowbar would in fact lose the match, as Norman managed to lean over and get the 3 count. All in all, a pretty entertaining goofy match, ruined by a very goofy finish. That being said, I could have gone without seeing the Big Wiggle twice. Following this, Disco Inferno meets Bananas in Pajamas. Alright. And then we have the Battle Royal, which is this show's biggest disaster. A goofy segment acting as a match that does nothing for anyone involved. This is also part of the tournament, mind you. It's a Battle Royal where people just enter at random. It's not presented like a Royal Rumble, but rather an open invitation to anyone on the roster. So a match that originally starts off with the likes of Buff Bagwell, Disco Inferno, and then suddenly Stevie Ray, now consists of random employees. Crowbar and Norman Smiley return, Jerry the King Lawler gets involved and forces Jeremy Borash to get in the ring too, referees, cameramen, timekeepers, interviewers, a bunch of other unnamed, unspecified people enter the match, and even the fruits and suits that we saw earlier get involved. It's just madness all around. Everyone walking around and attacking each other, trying to work around all the people who don't know how to work in the ring. Although, now that I put it like that just sounds like every indie battle royal you've ever seen. Except with way more failed comedy spots, which include Jerry Lawler rolling over an interviewer, the Bananas in Pajamas parodies eliminating Disco Inferno, and at some point, Crowbar getting eliminated and then taking it upon himself to do commentary throughout, where he just does a Gordon Sully impersonation. Although that was actually fun, all things considered. Ultimately, Buff gets the win and advances in the tournament. This is a pretty god-awful match that I feel was really only put together the way that it was to mask the fact that there weren't enough people to do this type of match with. And for a third time in a row, I'll just say it, I could have gone without seeing the King do the big wiggle. There seems to be a theme in this show. The final first round match is a guitar on a pole match. And I'm now just realizing that this show feels way more WCW than the actual WCW reunion show I recently covered did. The chosen one, Jeff Jarrett, faces Nathan the Front Row Jones. Before we even get into the match, I think it's pretty obvious who this favors. One of these guys is a guy who spent his career breaking guitars over people's heads as a signature, and the other guy is some guy that once almost teamed with The Undertaker at WrestleMania. And that didn't even happen yet. Jeff Jarrett comes out and talks about having the stroke in the company. Once again, really playing into this WCW 2.0 approach.
Can't you just feel the stroke?
Nathan comes out to the ring, accompanied by Rove McManus, who is an Australian TV show host, I believe. The show has made a point to address this and even had segments and interviews featuring this guy, but I don't know him. And the show doesn't do a good job of explaining him, so I don't get him. Well, he speaks for Nathan Jones, which is good because I guess somebody had to. He talks him up and tells Jeff Jarrett that he doesn't have a chance at defeating the big man, even though this match clearly favors him. So let's get a couple things clear. This is before Nathan Jones' time in WWE, a company which would further train him and still felt that he was a little bit too green after that. That much is evident here as he fails to complete moves, awkwardly sells, and rushes through the match as fast as possible. However, what I will say about him is that there's clearly some potential here. Sure, he's got a good look, but he also has an impactful looking way of hitting moves. And he's got a lot of agility for a bigger dude. I actually saw more potential in this short outing than I did throughout his entire WWE run. I'm sure it helps that he's working with a pro like Jarrett, who definitely did more than his part in carrying the match. This completely unmemorable match that Jeff Jarrett wins. Moving on. After the match, Jerry Lawler invites the Bananas in Pajamas to explain their actions against Disco Inferno earlier on. The segment is then interrupted by the West Hollywood Blondes, Lenny and Lodi. The only reason this happens is so that the two pairings can jokingly be referred to as fruits.
It's bad enough we got 2 fruits in the ring, now we got 4 fruits in the ring.
There is not a wrestling fan in the world that wants to see 2 fruits in the ring. 2 fruits.
Get out of the ring. Which 2?
2 fruits.
Somehow, this leads to Commissioner Bret Hart coming out to give the two a match in the tournament against Road Dogg, as his would-be opponent Juventud Guerrera was apparently injured in the opening Cruiserweight title bout.
Wait a second.
There are a few scary botches, but luckily in the end, no one was hurt.
You lie!
What a sentence. I can actually physically smell the nitro in the air. The match is presented as being a handicap match, but it quickly turns into a triple threat, with the two teammates brawling and trying to advance into the finals. It is just as bad and just as confusing as it sounds. The match really just consists of gay jokes from commentary and intentional innuendo in the ring. And once again, how many times do you want to be doing this on your show? This whole show just feels like the Attitude Era if it was a kink. Road Dogg wins and advances into the finals. The semifinals roll on as Buff Bagwell takes on Jeff Jarrett. Before the match, Buff Bagwell cuts a promo while being interviewed by Stevie Ray, the man he just helped eliminate in his qualifying battle royal. The two play out a funny Three Stooges bit.
You hold this mic? Sure. You know, Buff, what are you doing? I'm holding the mic. Give me this damn mic. I'm the one interviewing here. Now, Buff.
Before Buff talks about his upcoming match with Jarrett and ends the promo saying,
Whip and Buff. You figure it out. What? Whip and Buff?
That's because this match is a lumberjack with straps match. Because once again, this is the aborted offspring of WCW 2000.
From Atlanta, Georgia, weighing in at 244 pounds, Buff Bagwell.
Boy, I really hope somebody got fired for that blunder.
The match is hilariously one-sided. As Jeff is thrown over the top rope, he's whipped by the women at ringside. But when Buff is thrown out, he's coddled by them. Listen, it's stupid, but it's kind of fun and goofy. Completely out of place in what should be a very serious title tournament match, but fun in its own right. Of course, the gimmick overstays its welcome as it overshadows any actual in-ring work, with the match ending when the girls go after referee Slick Johnson for policing Buff Bagwell, leading to Buff hitting the blockbuster and getting an unofficial 3 count, only for Jeff Jarrett to no-sell his finish, hop to his feet, and hit Buff with the stroke for the finish. Really bad. Both the sentence I just said and just the whole spectacle. It's just all bad. There's hardly any wrestling to speak of here. I get that they're probably trying to keep these guys safe for the big finale. Working 2 to 3 matches on a card is pretty rough and honestly probably shouldn't be asked of most talent. But by keeping things this light, it's coming at the expense of the excitement of the crowd and the interest that they could have in this tournament. Maybe don't play out the full tournament in one episode. Next is what's billed as the Black Wedding match, which shows the at the time real significant others, Gangrel and Luna Vachon, facing each other. Before the match, Luna cuts a promo that she's going to kick her husband's ass for losing every match on the tour before this. At least I think that's what she said. It's hard to make out, both due to the quality and Luna's voice. A Black Wedding match is just a hardcore match with household appliances, and with both parties dressed for the occasion. The Vampire Warrior pleads with his wife as she attacks him, desperately trying to reason with her, until eventually she takes off her ring and spits in his face, causing Fangin' and Bangin' to hit his finish and sadly take his leave. It's kind of hard for me to judge this, it's barely a match. As an angle, I think it could be interesting. Admittedly, I may be biased because I was actually a fan of both of their work. If this is actually going somewhere worthwhile, I think this could potentially be a really good start to a story. After this, I guess the company needed to fill time as they were setting up the main event's cage, so they have Disco Inferno come out and cut a promo to challenge the Fruits and Suits. At which point, one of them comes down to brawl with Disco in the cage and follows him to the top of that cage, where he's thrown through a table by Disco Inferno. What did I just say about Mick Foley and the Hell in a Cell? What did I just say? There's a time and a place to do things and a reason to do those things. This had none of that. This whole show just feels like a fever dream. I'm watching it and I'm not even convinced it's real. It's time for the main event as the former roadie takes on his former mentor. It's Double J versus the real Double J. Jesse James takes on Jeff Jarrett for the WWA World Heavyweight Championship in a steel cage match. A steel cage match, mind you, that allows you to climb out of the cage. Because of course it does. Jeff Jarrett versus Road Dogg was honestly more fitting for the finals in a mid-card title tournament. Calling either man a main eventer at this point in time is really a stretch. Even if Jarrett was a former world champion, in the eye of many fans, that was a mistake. Still, they tried to sell this match as being some sort of spectacle. Jeff lost a little blood, Road Dogg cut his famous promo before the match, they brought Bret Hart down to do commentary, talking up both men's credentials and past accolades, though any prior history between the two seemed to be forgotten. Which is disappointing, because I think that if they chose to play up that angle, the former friendship and teaming between these two, it would have added to the match from a storytelling standpoint at least. I think they work fine together, but it just doesn't come off as the major moment that this company probably intended for this to be. I can't sit here and point to anything done terribly bad or any horrific botches. They were okay. The match was just okay. To be fair, their match was hammered down by a nonsensical stipulation that didn't do anything to add anything to the match, as the only way to win it was pinfall and submission anyway. But again, the rules of it are unclear because at one point a ref bump happens so that Jeff can grab a guitar. So does that mean if the ref was up, that would be a disqualification? In a cage match? Jarrett wallops Road Dogg with a guitar and puts the sharpshooter on Jesse James. The New Age Outlaw taps out, but Commissioner Bret Hart doesn't allow the timekeeper to ring the bell. Road Dogg then low blows Jeff to put him in the sharpshooter, at which point Jeff Jarrett taps out. But once again, Bret doesn't let the timekeeper ring the bell this time either. He instead takes off with the belt until Road Dogg steals it from him and attempts to use it as a weapon on Jeff. Jarrett then ducks it and hits the stroke for the win to become the first official WWA champion. Bret goes into the ring to confront Jeff Jarrett as the commentary team calls Bret bitter and claims that his only problem with Jeff is that he can't compete for the WWA championship himself. Who's the face? Who's the heel? Who cares? As the company's newly crowned champion drops to his knees and cowers at the sight of the retired commissioner who puts him in a sharpshooter to close out the show. You had a main event that saw both men beat each other, but neither win counted because your non-heel authority figure didn't want them to win using his signature move. You had the heel win to send the crowd home unhappy, and you couldn't even have him end the show standing tall. You need to instead put over the guy who will never wrestle again. And most importantly, yet again, I could have gone without this. Come on, enough is enough. What are y'all doing? This match was alright until the end where it became unbearable. This whole show felt like a continuation of WCW 2000. Just minus anything that might have made WCW tolerable around that time. There's a lack of wrestling on this wrestling show and an emphasis on gimmicky stipulations. It's a show that's doing too much too soon and isn't doing a good job at it. The longest match on the card is the main event, which only goes to 10 minutes. I actually wanted to like this show, but the actual show itself made that an impossibility. In spite of all the talent attached, they couldn't outwork bad booking. With that being said, if you like this video and want to see me check out future episodes of the WWA, let me know in the comment section below by leaving a comment saying,
It's wrestling.
It's wrestling.
I am vengeance. I am the night. And that was V Infuso. Just remember, if you're not tuning in, then you're missing out.
So, if you like the words that came out of his mouth hole, and you too would like to become a V-generate, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, nerds!
And if you're not joining the fun, you're in for one bad day. And you know what they say about having one bad day?
Catch him next time. Same bat time. Same bat channel.
I also found out that outside of the DVD version of the show, there's more bootleg Nitro Girl dances, and even an additional Women's Royal Rumble. So, this show was really ahead of its time. Except that a man in drag almost won that Royal Rumble, so maybe not so much. It's a match that's so terrible in both premise and execution that it is the only match to not be included on the show on the DVD. And I do not blame them for that.